By the end of this replay episode, you will learn 10 healing factors that physicians need to know when treating cancer patients. Welcome back to another episode where I help younger physicians decrease stress and increase income by transitioning from corporate to independent practices, even without any business experience. In this episode, you'll discover how the mindset and the mind-body connection play a crucial role in healing, how integrative medicine and holistic approaches can support conventional cancer treatments, and as an update to this episode, that's episode 54, which we recorded last year, Carla emailed me and told me that there is now a peer-reviewed published study from Harvard that describes how the Radical Remission's mind-body program improved cancer patients' quality of life for at least 6 months. I'll share the link to the study in the show notes. Today, we're joined by Carla Mans-Giraud. And I don't know if you pronounce it French, but...
You did it beautifully. Usually the French pronunciation only comes into play in France or Canada.
Awesome. And so why don't you tell us a little about yourself? I am so happy and honored to have you on the podcast because I read the book Radical Remission by Kelly Turner. And it was pretty enlightening, especially the stories about doctors who didn't listen. And I'm all about listening to my patients. And one of the things I got from it, and I'm sure we're gonna get into it, was that these are cancer survivors that did things after they got the cancer to help better their health. And the first thing I took out of this was, why are we waiting till we get cancer? Let's do it before we get cancer. So tell us about yourself. Tell us about Radical Remission. And I know there's a new book out. Love to hear the stories and introduce our guests to who you are.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I am so honored to be here. I really appreciate you reaching out to us at the Radical Remission Project. So Carla Mans-Giraud, I am a co-director at the Radical Remission Project. And also I have a private holistic cancer health coaching practice. And I am a radical remission survivor myself. So always honored to be able to share the research of radical remission and my personal story. And, the book just rocked my world when I first read it way back in 2016. That first book, Radical Remission, came out in 2015. And this was the Dr. Turner's compilation of all her research. So that book became a New York Times bestseller. And then in 2020, she wrote the second book, this one back here behind me, Radical Hope. Uh-huh. And in Radical Hope, it's an update. It adds a 10th factor and updates the survivor stories and the research that independently supports all of her research. What she found when she did this research, she was looking at one case of spontaneous remission, as the medical community calls it. And she realized that we had something to learn from that person, and she wanted to dig in. Well, then she was just horrified to find out that there were thousands of cases of called spontaneous remissions at that time that nobody was digging into. Nobody was researching. Nobody was asking those people, what are you doing to get into remission? And as part of her PhD dissertation at the University of California, Berkeley, she did the research. So she went on a 1-year, travel abroad, talking to survivors and their healers to find out what these people were doing. So in that book, in Radical Remission, that she wrote almost 10 years ago now, she was talking to people who had either utilized conventional medicine and it failed. So they went home on hospice, and then they started doing things themselves that took them into remission. Or the second category of people were folks that had used an alternative approach from the beginning. They didn't use any conventional. Now, I'll say right here, Radical Remission Project, Dr. Turner, myself, were not against conventional medicine at all. It's just that we knew there was something to learn from these people. And so we heard that and dug into it with them. Dr. Turner did. But in Radical Hope, she brings in that third category of people like myself who are utilizing an integrative approach to overcome our diagnosis.
So what, were you one of the ones that were interviewed by her in the first book or in the
I
first
was
research?
not. My initial cancer diagnosis was in 2003. I was 37 years old, and it was an early stage breast cancer diagnosis, and I did a conventional treatment protocol.
I'm gonna pause you now because someone maybe listen to this 5 years from now or 10 years from now. We're in 2023, and she
Right.
did say that Carla just said that she was diagnosed initially with breast cancer in 2003, so 20 years
Correct.
ago.
20 years ago.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that initial cancer diagnosis for me was kind of treated and over and done in 9 months. Continue 5 years of tamoxifen after the chemo, mastectomy, radiation, and all. But I didn't make permanent changes to my lifestyle. I didn't know any better. I didn't do anything differently. But when I hit each cancerversary, right, got further and further away from that initial diagnosis, I thought I was safe. And by the time I hit my 10-year cancerversary, I thought, this is it. I'm done. Great.
So at this point, you're 47 years old.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you've gone through mastectomy, chemo, radiation also?
Radiation. Yep.
So
And then
you were,
5 years.
what stage were you when you were originally diagnosed?
It was actually 3B.
Really?
It was
I didn't
7 of
realize that.
21 lymph nodes involved. So actually, Doc, is that even early stage or is that
No,
kind
that's
of
not,
late?
that's not early stage. That's later stage cancer.
Yeah. So I
Especially if
should
you have
correct that then.
yeah, especially if you have lymph node involvement.
Right.
So,
And at 37 years old with lymph node involvement, they wanted to give it the big guns, right? They really wanted to give me the best chance possible of
sure.
surviving it. And so yeah, I went through all of that. And from a complementary approach, I did look at acupuncture and other things I could do, but I really got some pushback from the medical community. And then my husband was like, no, you shouldn't do that if they don't think you should do that. Mm-hmm. So it was after treatment that I did a little bit of that. But in 2003, the internet wasn't a real big thing, and I wasn't doing the research myself to figure this out. So in 2011, when I got the metastatic diagnosis, 11 years later in 2014, I said that wrong. 2014 is when I got my metastatic diagnosis. It was 11 years from that first diagnosis. Remember, I thought I was safe after 10 years.
Yeah.
So that was quite a blow. And cancer had metastasized to my bones. And it was all over my spine, my pelvis, my rib, clavicle, hips. It was kind of everywhere in my torso, the bones. Maybe some spots on the lung, but nothing that ever actually materialized. So I immediately decided to make some big changes. I knew I needed the lifestyle changes to go with the conventional medicine. So I did take the hormone blocking drugs. I had a hormone receptor positive cancer. And the biopsy was inconclusive. We're trying to biopsy bone, and that's difficult to do. And they poked me, I don't know, 5 or 6 times, never got a good, clear sample. So we decided to treat the cancer as if it were the original cancer from 2003.
Which was, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that was estrogen positive.
Correct. ER/PR positive.
Okay.
Yep. HER2 negative. And so that's the route we took, and the cancer immediately responded. But I immediately had changed my diet, had detoxed my life and household products and beauty care products, and went back into therapy to look at, what did I need to deal with? I innately knew I needed to do a lot more to overcome it this time. So that was late 2014 through 2015. And it was in 2016 when I found the book, Radical Remission. This is my early copy of the book. And it's signed by Dr. Turner because I had the pleasure of attending a workshop that she presented at the Omega Institute in 2018.
So this was in California, or where did she do
Omega is in Rhinebeck, New York.
New York, okay.
Yep. And we still offer the workshop at Rhinebeck, New York, at Omega Institute in Rhinebeck. We're typically there every year offering the Radical Remission workshop. Dr. Turner does not do any workshops herself anymore.
Yeah. So where are you located now?
I'm in the Chicagoland area.
Chicago. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you attended the workshop, and then what happened?
And then decided that, well, when I found the book in even before going to the workshop, it was very validating because I went through the table of contents, which was a list of the 9 healing factors. And I was able to say, check, check, check. I'm working on that. I've been working on that, or I've really nailed it. And then there were a couple that I hadn't yet explored or didn't fully understand or knew I needed to work on more. And it just gave me a roadmap to what I needed to do and what I needed to keep doing. And I knew that these needed to be permanent lifestyle changes. And in Dr. Turner's research, what those 1,500 plus radical remission survivors led her to determine was that these common 10 healing factors that every single one of them were doing needed to be permanent lifestyle changes that they made in order to overcome their diagnosis.
So the healing factors, let's delve a little bit deeper into that, because I think that's what intrigued me, because many of those factors were things that I have been trying to do in my life these days, and actually been trying to tell my patients to also do. So she asked patients questions and she surveyed them, and there were different factors that patients were doing that not all of them were doing. But these 9 or now 10 factors is what she found in patients who survived cancer. Exactly. All of them were doing?
All of them. All of them were doing all 9, now 10 of these healing factors. So she found 75 different healing factors that these 1,500 people were doing.
Okay.
But these 10 were common among every single one of them. And the 10th one that got added in the new book that came out in 2020 was exercise and movement.
Okay.
And she went back and re-interviewed or looked at the surveys she'd done, and she realized that all of those survivors from the first go round really were moving their body as much as they could when they could. But remember, she was talking to people who'd come out of had gone into hospice care and overcome. So they couldn't exercise in the traditional sense of the word. They weren't doing the marathons they used to do or going to the gym and lifting weights. But what they were doing, and what was really important to their healing, was moving their body as much as they could when they could. And we know from tons of research how important exercise is to preventing or getting through our treatment and overcoming our diagnosis. So that's why she wanted to look at it again.
Sure. So if I remember correctly, I'm going to try to go by memory. The 9 that I remember were supplements. So certain supplements, I think vitamin D was a big one. Dairy, avoiding dairy. Is that one of them?
Well, diet. So diet is one.
Okay.
Herbs and supplements is another. And then exercise is the 10th one that is the only other physical factor. So those 3 are the only physical factors.
Okay. So what are the other ones? Spirituality,
the other 7
I think.
are emotional and mental, right?
Yeah,
They're emotional and spiritual factors. So the others are empowerment. This is taking control of your health. We like to tell people they need to become the CEO of their health and sit at the head boardroom table and line up all of their practitioners, their doctors, their healers, their acupuncturists, whoever it is. Those are the experts that you're listening to, but ultimately the decision is yours. Yep. So that's empowerment, which in the first book was called Taking Control of Your Health.
Okay.
And again, she revised it because we don't have control over everything. Yeah. So she calls it empowerment now. Then there's intuition. It's really following that internal voice, whether you call it your higher power or your conscience or your pilot light or, whatever term you have for that internal voice that helps you know what's right for you. So intuition is big. There's releasing suppressed and negative emotions, increasing our positive emotions. Social support is huge. And we know from a lot of research that social support can be more beneficial to our health than smoking, not drinking, and not eating fatty foods all combined. And then there's spirituality. We deepen our spirituality, deepen that connection with something bigger than ourselves. And then strong reasons for living. What's your why for being on this earth? I think I got all 10.
Yeah. And some of them overlap with what Dan Buettner has been doing in the Blue Zones as well.
Yes.
When you look at the spirituality, you look at the the Moais or the tribes that you hang out with. And so if you don't have that social support, you don't live as long. And so there are people
Right.
who have lifelong friends that can support you in the good and the bad times. And
Yeah.
that's really key. That's amazing. So has anyone replicated this research? Because I haven't done enough research to see if anyone has done something similar in cancer survivors.
There's a lot of books coming out around the cancer outcomes, around remissions, that really overlap this. So maybe not replicating this exactly, but when you look at others, Lorenzo Cohen at MD Anderson wrote a book, Anti-Cancer Living, as a follow-up to the earlier book. And I can't remember the gentleman's name, but
what was the name? What was the name of the doctor? I can put him in the show
Lorenzo
notes.
Cohen.
Lorenzo
Cohen, I believe. Anti-Cancer Living is the name of the book.
Uh-huh.
And he's got, I don't know, 7, or he's got the mix of 6 is what he calls it.
Okay.
So the mix of 6 is his thing. And then there's the book Cure, Rediger. I can't remember his first name. He's a doctor as well. And he's done some research, and what his research found really overlaps. So not everybody calls it exactly the same thing, but there's a lot of overlaps to this research that Dr. Turner did. And, the factors that help us survive, you can look at them and you can see where they really line up. And the big thing is, it's not just about your physical health. Yeah. It's about your emotional and your spiritual health as well.
That's 70% of it. Right. So it's almost, like you say, the 80-20 rule. So, 80% will help you accomplish more. The 20% that you do are you know what I'm getting at, but
yes.
The 80-20 rule.
Yep.
I can't think right now. So you have an amazing story. What are your doctors saying now? I mean, what are they saying? Are they saying it's the medicine that we're giving you, or are they looking at the things that you're doing in lifestyle that's keeping you?
So I fired my conventional oncologist several years ago and moved over to an integrative oncologist. And I'm blessed and lucky enough to be in the Chicagoland area where there is an integrative oncologist. And I switched over because the conventional oncologist did not support me or partner with me on my lifestyle changes. He didn't think diet mattered. He didn't think exercise mattered. He didn't think the emotional and spiritual stuff mattered. For him, it was take this pill and you'll be fine. He did tell me, to his credit, that this was a chronic disease we could manage.
Okay.
And when he told me that in the very beginning, it gave me a lot of empowerment. I'm like, fine, I know how to manage things. Yeah. I can manage the hell out of this, and I'm going to, because I intend to live to be 100 plus healthy and sane. It's always been a goal.
That's wonderful.
I am not giving up on that goal.
Yeah, and you look at the statistics, you're obviously beating that. If you look at, I did a little bit of research on the survival. I'm sharing a screen now. If you're listening to this on an audio, I'm actually sharing a screen on the American Cancer Society's surveillance, the data that's from the Surveillance Epidemiology and Results database that's compiled by the National Cancer Institute. And the 5-year survival of metastatic breast cancer when it's had distant metastasis is 30%. And so I wonder if it's the 30% that go through these lifestyle changes and do these things that keep them around, because 70% don't survive, right? So what's going on in that 30%? Obviously, localized is 99%, regional is 86%, but that distance metastasis, which you have, is something that I think should be researched, obviously. So I wonder if anyone out there wants to research and have a research project, that'd be a good research project to find out, of the 30% that they're surveying, what are they doing?
Exactly. Yeah, that would be great to know. And, for me, I think I am an outlier, right? I am a radical remission survivor. I am in active treatment.
Okay.
So a remission is, someone that has beat the odds, right?
Yeah.
And I am beating the odds. One of the drugs that I'm on, I do take two. One's a pill, one's an injection. So I go in every month to see my integrative oncologist. I go to my healing place, to my healing team, and they fully support me in the holistic approach. So their program is all about nutrition, supplementation, and mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
Right. So they're there to support me. So once I had that partnership, I felt really good. And I switched over to them at the point where in my story, I had a liver tumor come up. So initial diagnosis came in late 2014. 3 months later, I had my follow-up scan. Cancer had been arrested. It was not moving. A year and a half later, even though it had remained stable all that time, a liver tumor came up. I switched my over because the protocol the conventional doc wanted to do was something completely different, whereas the protocol the integrative doc wanted to do was, let's keep you on that one med, add this other one that goes with it, and let me support you in your lifestyle changes. We had that liver tumor fully resolved in 6 months, and I've seen no evidence of disease since. So stable or no evidence of disease. So there's no evidence in my organs of any cancer, and the bone scan shows used to be cancer there. And I intend to keep it that way. But I am definitely really outpacing the norm for one of these particular drugs. That's a hormone blocking drug, right? It's supposed to give women, 9 months between recurrence, right? It's all about let's lengthen the time between your recurrences, because this is metastatic. We know it's just going to keep coming back. I've been on that for 8.5 years, 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's working. And I don't have any side effects from these two drugs. I believe that's because of the lifestyle changes I've made.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, you're on these drugs that are really not supposed to be on, you're not supposed to be on it for that long. I don't know if there are any long-term studies on.
I know. I keep asking.
Do they have any? Do they tell you?
No. I mean, they know there are some women that have been on it since the trial.
Okay.
So longer than I have. I don't know how many. I haven't actually gone and looked for, show me the study, show me how many, and show me, but my doctor just keeps saying, well, you're not experiencing any side effects and it's working. So why change it?
Yeah.
And to some degree, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And to some degree, I'm like, but do we know what this is going to do to me? Remember, I want to live to be 100. How is going to affect me, 20 more years down the road.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'll be on it forever, but I think I will be able to maintain this stability and make it to 100, healthy and sane.
And, there's something to be said about your body's healing powers, right? If we give it the right nutrients, we give it the right things, you can heal infections, you can heal certain diseases with your own body's ability to fight this stuff. So Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the mind-body connection is so important. And when we, in the book and when we do the workshops, we really, really impress that upon people. Like what your mind believes is what your body's going to do for you. Right. And just a quick example, if everybody closes their eyes for just a minute and imagines a lemon, it's a sweltering hot day and you've got a glass of lemonade and there's a lemon in the fridge and you slice that lemon and put it in your lemonade. You slice that lemon and you decide to put a piece of it in your mouth. What happens? What do you imagine happening? And everybody says, oh, I'm puckering, salivating, right? You imagine that lemon and your body starts to respond to it. Are you sucking on a lemon right now? No, it's your mind and your body connection. And if your mind has that much power, why not put it to good use?
Yeah. So in the integrative world and the integrative medicine that you're doing, or that you're participating in, is there a panel of lab work that the doctor does? Okay, so they are testing your vitamin levels and
yes. So every 3 months in the beginning, I'm on a 6-month schedule now since I've gotten an A+ on my labs for so long, but it's a full terrain panel, is my doc calls it. And he is looking at five hallmarks of cancer. So the panel is looking at oxidation, inflammation, immunity, glycemia, and circulation, because he feels like those are five really important things to be paying attention to when you have cancer. And that's how he prescribes the supplements that I take.
Gotcha.
And I have a lot of supplements that I take.
What's one supplement you think is the most helpful in the research that's being done, or that you did, or that you're taking? What would be that number?
I don't know that there's any one supplement that I would say is the most important, because it really depends on your diagnosis, what you're dealing with, and your particular body and your DNA and everything that's going on for you. What we know from the Radical Remission research is there were 3 categories of supplements that every single one of the survivors was utilizing. That was supplements to boost the immune system, supplements to detoxify the body, and the third category was supplements to help aid digestion.
Gotcha. So I'm
but
guessing.
You mentioned vitamin D, and
yeah.
I personally do know that vitamin D is a big one and is really important. And there's, your primary care doctor may tell you, oh, here's the level of vitamin D to be at. You might actually need more than that.
Yes.
And if you have a cancer diagnosis, you're probably going to need more than that.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I remember probiotics were also discussed as well, or things that can help.
That's in the digestive system, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Probiotics are a big thing in that category.
Yeah. So these are things that, like I told you at the beginning, or like I mentioned at the beginning, that I think we should be doing to prevent cancer. So this is not something that obviously we don't want to get cancer, but when we do get it, we can shift. But why not shift before? What do you think are the barriers to patients switching before? Because I try to tell my patients, and you were in the situation where you had to make those radical changes. What was it that was the catalyst that made you say, okay, no, we need to stop this?
Well, my life depended on it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I was one of those people that needed the diagnosis before I made the changes. And so many of us get a diagnosis and say, but I was healthy. But when you look at what is really healthy, and, people think that the diet they're eating because they eat salads and vegetables is really healthy. But what else are you putting on that salad?
Yeah.
How much dairy are you putting on it? How much salad dressing are you putting on it, right? How much meat are you eating? The standard American diet is not a healthy diet.
No,
so unless you're eating a Mediterranean diet or something more significant, vegan, ketogenic, macrobiotic, you're probably not eating that healthy, even though you think you are.
Yeah.
And remember, diet is only 1/10 of the healing factors, right?
Yeah.
So,
good point.
What is your emotional life like? What is your spiritual life like? What are the other things going on in your life that are affecting you? So in the traditional Chinese medicine world, they believe that emotions can cause blockages in the body, which is where disease happens, right? And if you're stuffing your emotions, if you're holding on to things from the past, if you're wishing your life is what it used to be when you were captain of the football team or the prima ballerina or whatever it is, that's living in the past, not in the present. And things can get stuck. And you're not being present to the moment, to releasing those things, those emotions, those feelings, those, we call some emotions negative or bad emotions. All of our emotions are messengers. There are no bad emotions. Fear is a very useful emotion. You would never want to not have fear, because fear is going to warn you when something bad is about to happen to you. When someone's following you on that dark street, when a truck is about to run up over the sidewalk and run you down, fear is the thing that wakes you up and gets you moving. So you want fear to be in your life. What you need to do is start working with your emotions. Feel them fully and release them and let them go. Don't stuff them. Don't ignore them. Don't hang on to them. Let them wash right through you.
That's awesome advice, because we find that a lot of patients who end up getting cancer have anger issues. They don't have good relationships with their families. They have past issues that were never resolved. And it just makes their journey much more difficult in the healing
that's
process.
really true. And maybe not everybody can point to something like that, but many of us with a diagnosis can.
Yeah.
But back to that whole, let's reduce our risk of cancer. How do we prevent it or at least reduce our risk of it? I so wish people would adopt these lifestyle changes that I've adopted in order to prevent their own diagnosis. And then if they were to get a diagnosis, they're going to be in so much better shape to handle that diagnosis and whatever the treatment may be if they choose to do conventional treatment. But so many people have a hard time with change. And I can't tell you how many people say, oh, I could never give up my wine. I could never give up my cheese. I could never give up, red meat. Yes, you can. I gave up all of that and I'm still living and I'm healthier than I ever was. And I like to say I'm 95%, I'm healthier than 95% of the people on the planet. I just happen to have a little cancer diagnosis in my medical chart.
It's all in how you see it.
How you spin it, right? And mindset's huge. I mean, we talked about the mind-body connection. So as a cancer coach, I really help people work on their mindset and their beliefs. If you say, I could never, well, we need to work on that.
Yeah. You just put that in your conscious, your subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. So how do you do that? I know that you have workshops. I know that you have seminars. Tell us about some of the workshops that you have, because I think I'm super interested in getting you down to Florida. If you can come down to Florida maybe sometime.
I would love to come to Florida. I live in Chicago. So can I come in February?
Yes, you can.
Okay, great.
Love to be able to host you and maybe even bring you to one of our wellness centers in the community where we can bring patients and maybe even doctors who may have a little bit more of an open mind than most of our providers. But we here practice impossible, and we want physicians to understand that there are other ways of doing things that we may not have been taught in medical school. So tell us about your workshops.
I would so love to get more doctors, more practitioners into this new way of thinking, because lifestyle medicine is definitely a thing and should be more of a thing. So the more doctors that we can get in on that, the better. So at the Radical Remission Project, what we do is train coaches and practitioners to deliver the workshops or the one-on-one coaching around these 10 healing factors and the research behind it. We've trained coaches and practitioners. We've got doctors and nurses and mental health practitioners and acupuncturists and all sorts of people that are learning this research and then incorporating it into their practice. Or if they're a coach, right, they're just utilizing these 10 healing factors, delivering workshops, delivering one-on-one coaching or group coaching. So in my personal practice with my partner, we have a community we call the Health Navigators. It's a virtual cancer wellness community. And so we're offering the workshops virtually and in person, as do some of the other coaches, right? They're offering these workshops so you can come and learn these 10 healing factors, learn how to apply them to your life. And in the workshop, we're going through each of the factors. And the real juicy part of the workshop is the activities that we take you through around each one of these factors to help you figure out, how can I apply this to my life? How can I walk away from this great workshop, go back to my day-to-day life and figure out how to do this lifestyle change? And change is hard. I have a background in change management. I know how hard change is for people. There are some of us that are early adopters and there are others that are late adopters. But making these lifestyle changes can really benefit you for ensuring that your health span equal your lifespan, right? So I want to be 101. And I always say healthy and sane. I don't want to get to 101 sitting in a wheelchair, drooling on myself, unable to get up and walk and move. I want the health span to be there. And these lifestyle changes in the radical remission research can help support that, as well as helping people overcome a diagnosis. So in the new book, Radical Remission, Dr. Turner started to introduce stories people that were overcoming other diagnoses as well. So there's stories of people with autoimmune disorders, with MS, with ALS, with Alzheimer's. People are overcoming all sorts of diagnoses by using these lifestyle changes to support their health. So people can find the Radical Remission Project at radicalremission.com. They can go find events, workshops that are being offered virtually or in person, and they can find a coach, support them on their journey. And you can find a coach that speaks your language, or a coach that lives near you and offers in person, or you can do it virtually, or maybe you want a coach that does energy healing or acupuncture also. And you can search through our 115 or so coaches to find someone that meets your needs. And if you're interested in becoming a coach, we do teacher and coach training every year to certify people to teach and coach on these lifestyle changes.
That's awesome. Well, this has been so educational and informative. I know that people will be intrigued by this conversation, and we really have to consider bringing you down here in the winter.
I would love to. Absolutely. So, let's work it out. I would love to offer your patients in your community introduction. We could do a 1-hour introduction, so everybody kind of gets, here's what it's going to be like. And then we can do 10 healing factor workshop. We can do it in, live and in person right there in the Tampa area, and take a couple of days over the weekend to get everybody into it. So awesome. Let's do that.
So what you learned today is how the mindset and the mind-body connection play a crucial role in healing, how integrative medicine and holistic approaches can support conventional cancer treatments, and you learned how a Harvard study demonstrated a positive outcome for patients who participated in the Radical Remission's Mind-Body program. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to hear more, subscribe, follow in your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode.